Oh, now you're live, girl.
Okay.
But if you want to be not live, flip that off.
On? Yes.
I'm going to let you decide if you're open for questions.
I'm open for.
Otherwise, just talk.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good. I'm good.
Start.
Where is this? Right here. Oh my God.
Welcome. We are so glad you're here. Welcome to Friends Talking at St. Paul's. My guest today, I cannot say how honored I am that Carolyn Bates has come up from San Antonio to visit us, to explore with us our Magdalene ministry. Let me back up just a little bit, if I may, by way of introduction. This whole Magdalene movement that's coming, that's just flooding into Fayetteville, began, as you know, in Nashville, Tennessee. It really began 18 years ago. It really began here as a weekly Eucharist across the street at the prison, invited to take communion to an Episcopal inmate. She loved it, she brought friends, and eventually, well, very quickly, it became a Sunday evening liturgy that we go in every Sunday evening at 5:30 to worship. Well, after a year or two of that, Kathy McGregor moved to town. She's a professional storyteller with a whole lot of other interests and expertise, but she created what you now know as Prison Story Project. That effort we have, that gift to us of going into the prison and working with 12 women across 12 weeks, professional storyteller, poet, professional songwriter, professional dramatic director, and actors all collaborate together to create an exploration of individually each woman exploring her own story at a pace and in a way she wants to. And of course, you all, some of you have seen those productions. We have another one coming up May 2nd at the Fayetteville Underground with a whole new group of 12 women. Well, meeting those women and falling in love with them and realizing that typically they are released to the same homes that set them up for failure, that set them up. They're being released to those same homes because there really isn't any other place to go. And with that in mind, we began to explore and discovered Magdalene House. I do want to say the content here, it's probably best that people are 14 years and older, that anybody who has suffered a great deal of childhood trauma might not be comfortable here. Please feel free to leave. Take good care of yourselves. Because what we learned through Magdalene and what we learned through the women across the street, we have learned that invariably, I think I will say invariably, women who end up, Magdalene is a home for women coming out of prostitution and human trafficking. Invariably, those women share a history of childhood abuse in the home between the ages of 7 and 11, of addiction to cover that pain, of prostitution to pay for the addiction in many cases. And ultimately, many of them fall into human trafficking. They become slaves of others, used by others. Now, when I went to Magdalene to explore a home for our women, I thought, well, it works here in Nashville, but we don't have prostitution. We don't have human trafficking. And with that in mind, to pop that balloon, I'd love for you to meet Carolyn Bates, my good friend, Carolyn Bates. Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Hi, let me first say that I'm so honored to be here. I promise you I am. And I can't do this without inviting God in. Because if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be sitting here and I wouldn't be alive. So I trust Him with everything in me. I trust Him. And by faith, I made it here. Trusting every step of God. And let me, first of all, thank Suzanne and St. Paul's Church for trusting the calling to help human traffic survivors and prostitutes. To not just allow us to be survivors, but to be all that God called us to be. Not who men said we were, but who God says we are. And that's the most amazing thing that we do here. So for that reason only is why I sit here. It's not about me. It's not about telling my story, but I have to tell my story in order to open eyes to human trafficking and what it's like to live in my shoes and maybe help somebody else that's coming behind me. And so, again, I give God all the praise and glory for this opportunity. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Akron, Ohio. I had a father and mother. My father served in the Air Force. He came out of the Air Force and he definitely had PTSD. My mom was extremely young and extremely loyal to my father. She had 7 children, and I was the middle child. My mom was abused by my father, so she left our home when I was 7 years old and left us with our father. And my father worked at night. He was very successful. All I know is my father was extremely successful. We lived in a nice home. We were in private Catholic school. The girls were in all private girls' Catholic school, and the boy, my one and only brother, was in a private boys' Catholic school. And I'm sure my father thought that he was doing what was best to give us a chance to have a good life. Unfortunately, we had, my dad was an alcoholic. So he worked nights, and when he came home, he was typically always drunk. Well, in my family, I don't want to say anything to bring down religion or spirituality, but my brother went to all-boys Catholic school, and during that time, I can only speak facts. I know that my brother went through a lot, and unfortunately, because of that, he started raping the girls in the family. He tried to rape the other ones, and he couldn't, and he was successful with me. At 7 years old, I was raped till I turned 14, and at 14, I got pregnant. I got pregnant by my brother. And I really want to make sure that I don't hurt anybody in telling my story. I have a son from that rape that I have to protect, and I love very, very, very much. But I know God don't do accidents, and He came here for a reason, and I don't know what the reason is. But I do know that determined my future. I set out to protect my son, and when I got pregnant by my brother, I did know that I wanted my son to not feel the pain and the stigma that not the population put on me, but I put on me. I thought that I was a mistake. I thought that I was trash, and I thought that I was nobody, and I thought that I was some kind of freak because I didn't have a normal life as everybody else. And I had a lot of friends in school. I loved school, but as soon as I got pregnant, I stopped going to school. And I set out to have the best life that I can have. And one thing I knew is that sex was important. It was very important. It was important to men, and it was important to how they got it. And they got it any way they wanted it. And all I knew was rape. All I knew is trauma. So when I talked to my friends, and my friends asked me, well, Carolyn, we always talked about when, and if anybody, if it's too graphic for you, I don't know no other way to tell my story other than keep it real. So if I get too graphic, just raise your head and I'll tone it down a little bit. Because again, it's not about me. So I don't want to embarrass or hurt anybody in my voice and in the words that I use. Unfortunately, I don't know no other way to tell it but the way it happened and who I am. Okay, so if you raise your hand, you can raise it slightly. I will change some of my words. So my friends asked me, you know, Carolyn, we always talked about when we would do it the first time, and you never said anything. So I made up this story that I had sex with this guy and he just left town, and I didn't really know who he was, and I got pregnant, so I lied. So I knew how to start lying. I knew how to tell people what I thought they wanted to hear to be accepted. So I wanted to prove that I was having sex, so I had sex again right after I had my baby, and I got pregnant immediately the second time I had sex. I chose to that time, and I had my daughter. So at 16, I had 2 kids, and I ran away from home because it was so traumatic to be at home. By then, I was living with my mother. So I ran away from home, and I ran away to a guy who I thought had prestige. He had a lot of money in the cars, in diamonds and gold, and he was in human trafficking and all the illegal things there is to be into. Unfortunately, I was only 16, so I stayed with him. He was very abusive. I was beat every other day, and I didn't know at the time I was in training. So by the time I got with him, I was only around pimps and players and gangsters and people that did things illegal. So that's how I was taught to live in this world. Unfortunately, I wish I could have, and I did know God because I was in Catholic churches, so I knew God. I knew who God was, but I didn't understand how God allowed all this stuff to happen to me as a child and how he allowed me to go into this lifestyle. So I didn't know that this God that you guys talked about that loved me and that was a good God, I didn't know that God. And this God that would strike me down for every bad thought I had. So I had a lot of bad thoughts. So as I went on, I was around a lot of pimps, so I learned what pimps thought about women. So I knew I was going to be a prostitute, but I knew I would never choose a pimp because I knew how they felt about us. So I didn't choose one, and that was extremely hard. And before I left, the guy that was abusive, he introduced me to drugs. He gave me drugs when he thought I was getting ready to leave him, and that I didn't know would have me for the next 20 years fighting drugs and alcohol. So I left and I moved to Texas with my sister, and make it long to get past all that, I did prostitute in Houston, Texas. I became a prostitute, and I lived in the sleaziest hotel there is to live in, and I walked the tracks. And a track is a street that you walk and people drive by and pick you up, and you sell your body to. And for the first time in my life, I was happy. I was happy. Because now people weren't taking it from me. I was giving it to them, and I was getting something in return. I was getting money in return. But throughout the whole time, I kept thinking about God. I kept thinking, God, is this what you wanted me to be? I no longer saw my children. I no longer saw my family. I no longer saw anybody. I was in and out of cars. I loved the fast lane. I loved the nightlife, and I loved what I was doing. But I didn't understand. I didn't understand what kind of future would I have, and who would I be. So I got my first soliciting case in 1985, and I got a possession charge in 1985, and I was on my way to prison for the first time. Penitentiary, not prison. Back then it was penitentiary. So I went to penitentiary. I got 3 years sentence. I did a year and a half in the prison. And I remember being in jail and this lady coming to the bars and telling me, Carolyn, do you know God loves you? And I looked at her like, me? Are you talking? Do you know who you're talking to? Do you know all I've done? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I've done? You talking about God love me? And she said, yes, just as you are. Do you know that you can ask him for forgiveness and that he is just to forgive you? And do you know he will come into your heart and he will be your God? I don't care what nobody else told you, but I'm here to tell you that God loves you. And that day I said the sinner's prayer with that lady, and I felt different. I felt something different about God. I felt that he He accepted me for just who I am, didn't judge me anymore, and loved me. So I think that changed my walk in life. So I start saying, okay, God, I know what it's like to serve Satan, because Satan makes you do some really bad things. I lived an inhumane life, and I seen some things that no woman should see or do. I did. And he loved me. He said I'm somebody. I couldn't look in the mirror and say that, but I know God said it. So I started reading his word to see who I am, see who he says I am, not who I said I am, not who men said I am, not who women say I am. The main thing, not who I thought I was. So I did that. I like to say I only went to prison one time. I went to prison 3 times. And every time I went to prison, it was because I got back out and I kept going back to what I knew was familiar. I kept going back. Because, let me say this, and again, not to offend anybody, but when I come in this room and I come in the house of God, I want to know that I'm not different than you. I want to know that because of the walk I walked, I am just like you. I serve the same God you serve. I love the same God you love, but I want to know that. I need to feel that in my gut. That even when Magdalena House opened, and it opens to prostitution is what we did, it's not who we are. Mm-hmm. It's not who we chose to be. 7 years old, I didn't have a choice. I do today because of people like Suzanne and Magdalena House. I do today. I can tell my story differently. I'm not a victim. I'm a child of the Most High God. I'm going to be all that I can be, and I'm going to do whatever he tells me I can do. And I don't think that there's a limit as to where I can go and what I can do. Not because of me, but because of God. Because of God. And I chose him. The 3rd time I got out of prison, I was through. I said, God, if I'm ever to be who you say I'm going to be, then I got to spend some time with you. I can't date. I can't do anything. I'm going to spend time with you to let me look at men, first of all, men differently. Because you are not who the world voiced in my head what you're made of. Every man is not the man that I met back there. But I didn't know that. And women, I had to look at you different. I had to look, in order to look at you different, I had to look at me different. And I didn't know how to look at me different. Mm-hmm. So I spent 5 years with God, celibate, not dating, walking in a tunnel vision. And it changed the view of how I looked at men and women and how I looked at myself. 2 months out of prison, the 3rd time I got a job at United States Veterans Initiative as an AmeriCorps member doing outreach specialist. And then I was able to help veterans that served in the military. Then I got to learn who my father really was and what he really went through serving in the military and in combat. Less than a year, I moved up to an outreach coordinator. Less than another year, moved up to an outreach director. And here I was. I had, instead of standing, and not to tell a joke, but the first meeting that they told me I had was with some judges. I would talk to judges. And I remember telling my supervisor, do you have a clue what you're talking about? Only time I was around judges is when they're sentencing me. And now you're telling me to sit down and eat lunch with them? Oh, really? Really? And then I'd go home at night and scream at God, God, you got a sense of humor and you got to be crazy. Enough is enough. I don't want to talk to no judges. I don't want to eat with no judges. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. But God still, it's not about me. It's all about you, so I did. And actually, it was very successful. Homeless court in Houston was started because of those meetings with those judges that our homeless veterans, if they had tickets, it would be dismissed. So I started accomplishing things. And one thing I wanted to do was get married. I said, God, I'm older now. My clock is running out. I want to get married. You said when a man find, and you know what? I learned the word so much, I started reading it back to God. I said, God, I said, God, when you said when a man find a wife, he find a good thing. So if you made me a good thing, then there's a husband out there for me. And I'm ready to get married. Did I wait for God? No. I allowed a man, and I'll leave that part out, but I allowed a man to come into my life that we were friends. We talked over the phone. I knew his family, so I thought I knew him. So we got married. He has a little bit of my same background. He was molested as a child. He'd been in prison, federal prison, majority of his life. So we got so much in common, I should marry him, you know? So I picked a man that did what I did. But I went through the healing process with God to get where I was, but he didn't. And I was another target. And so instantly I saw the things that I saw when I was back there in the streets in my home. And God gave me an awesome home in Kingwood, Texas. And an awesome career. By now, I'm making more money than I made when I was on the streets. I was allowed to do anything I wanted to do, and I can go anywhere I wanted to go. But I was getting sick again, physically sick, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And later to find out that my husband started drugging me when I went to sleep the night from the time we got together. He drugged me at night. And it's a drug that they give you that for 3 hours you're under their control and you don't remember what happens to you when you wake up. And that went on for 3 years till I started. He taught me into leaving Kingwood and moving to Houston to get get me into his territory, and then he started selling me. And I put a recording in my house to find out what was going on in my house because something was going on. I was sick all the time. And I put a recording in our box spring, and my husband was in our bed with a boy that I know and having sex with a boy in our bed. So I like to say that I handled that well, but I didn't. I got a gun, and I pulled it on him. So I smile because I really didn't know. I just wanted him to know that, you know, I can convert back to what I know. But I think that it was God because I didn't hear the voicemail, that recorder. I thought he found it and got it, but I pulled the gun on him before I heard him in our bed with a boy. And I think that was by the grace of God because if I had heard it when I had the gun, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be in prison for murder for the rest of my life, and I would have taken somebody's life for no reason because he still didn't deserve for me to kill him. And so God allowed me to not do that. So I made it out of that, but it didn't stop me from being sold. He then sold me to a guy that was on crack. So that guy tortured me, and before my husband sold me, he started torturing me and burning me and doing all kinds of things to me. I remember getting on my knees on the sidewalk of Houston, Texas, Mother's Day in 2013, and asking God, and first of all, apologizing to God, because when I stood up, I said, God, I have to take care of my business out here. I cannot serve you and be out here too. I have to take care of my business because they were hurting me really bad. And they were doing things to me that on the streets, you don't call the police, you take care of your business. And I needed to. So I got on my knees and I apologized to God, and I told him I'm sorry that I can't serve you anymore. I have to get up and I have to go back to what I know. And this is a true story. I stood up And I apologized again to him. I said, but if you want me, I choose you, but you have to do it now. And I promise you, I called my sister and told her Happy Mother's Day because I knew I wouldn't be talking to my family again for a while, or either I would be dead or in jail for murder. And I was walking down the sidewalk, and somehow the square of the sidewalk was not there, and I fell in a 4-foot deep sinkhole. And I just remember feeling pain as I was going down in it. And this lady, and I said this 13-year-old boy is going to remember me for the rest of his life because they pulled me out. And I remember as soon as they got me out of it, I remember looking at the sky and saying, God, did you have to drop me in a sinkhole? Could you have did it any other way? Because now they call the ambulance. I'm in the ambulance and I'm on my way to the hospital. And 2 weeks later, I ended up in San Antonio, Texas, staying with a friend of mine in a treatment facility. And now I'm back to healing and getting better. But now I got all this other stuff going on. Not just I couldn't have my brother, but I couldn't have my husband. So God was wrong with me. And so God, if I tell you, it's been going on 2 years. Next month, May, will be 2 years now. And God has definitely changed the way I think about life, the way I look at you guys. And then I meet people like Suzanne, and I get to come here, and she gives me a voice, and I get to tell my story. And it doesn't matter who I say it to, because hopefully it helps somebody, but I'm alive. I'm alive. I no longer do drugs. I no longer prostitute. Don't want to prostitute. I want to be the best that I can be. And with the help of Magdalena House, we, not me, we get to make it. But she can't do it by herself. Magdalena House can't do it by themselves. It takes a community. And if you believe in me, then I can believe in me. There's going to be a lot of ladies coming behind me, and I want to open the door for them. I want to say that we deserve the best. We deserve a chance to have the best life there is to have. And with God, all things are possible. He said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He said that he will walk with me every step of the way. He said that I am somebody and he will never let me go. He said, for he know the plans he have for me, plans to prosper me and not to harm me, plans for a hope in the future. He said he will raise up an army, that he has children out there that care about you just the way I care about you, Carolyn, that will love you like I love you, that will not judge you, and that you can walk side by side with, and it won't matter. And because of that, I sit here, because Susan believed in me enough to say, Carolyn, I'll fly you all the way here from San Antonio, Texas. That's how much I believe in you. People that come cook spaghetti for me, and I'll go to sleep eating it and never even say thank you and still love me. You know? Still love me. So if I can't say nothing else, I love you guys, and when I see familiar faces, I know I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I know I'm supported. I'm not sitting up here by myself. I got a whole team of people standing by my side. That's what gives me strength. If I do it alone, I'm going to be back where I started at. With everybody on my side and standing with me, and not just me, the women coming behind me. Magdalena House, it not only needs to open up, it has to. It has to tell people like my husband, people like human traffickers, pimps, and I don't knock them because I know they're basing their decisions in life based on fear too. So I pray for them just like I pray for me. So I'm not here to bash them because they're sick individuals trying to get well too. So someday somebody will make a door for them. But right now we need to make a door for me and for the women coming behind me. So Magdalena House has to open because it's some very articulate, special women that depend on us and you and me to say, I believe in you. I love you. I love you. I don't know what it's like to be loved. My father didn't love me. My brother couldn't love me. My mother couldn't love me. The world out there definitely didn't love me. But you can say, I love you. And I'm not just going to say it, Carolyn. I'm going to donate to Magdalena House. I'm going to do whatever it takes to open that door. If I don't do nothing else but donate, if I don't do nothing else but volunteer, if I don't do nothing else but come shake one of those hands or hug one of them women and say, I love you, or help them open a place up that they will have a job so they can make money and not sell their body doing it. It's time, our playtime is over. We have to not just sit in our seat and say we believe in you, Carolyn. Support Magdalena House. Don't forget after you leave this room, this meeting. Don't forget every time they say that word, Magdalena House. I want you to put a face with a name. What does it mean to open a Magdalena House? It means I get a chance to be who God called me to be. That means you get an opportunity to be of service to God and show me who God really is. Show the women coming behind you who God really is. He needs your vessel. He don't need us, we need him. And without him, we can do it. And now I'm through. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Carolyn is open for questions. She is, as you might have observed now, she's a truth teller. It's how she has survived, isn't it? It's telling the truth. She's not interested in anything less than the truth. She has inspired me. She lives the authentic life and calls us to it. But with that in mind, she is open to your questions. And if you have them, I'd like to use the microphone.
As a teacher educator, I have some students who really have no idea what they're going into because they've lived very sheltered and perfect lives. And then they go to schools and they find out they have kids living in vans with their parent that's having sex with them in the van, and they have other issues that come up. What can we do to help people know there's a lot of different things going on? Or if they're coming from the other side of it, there are good people. What would you recommend?
Definitely, it's a miracle to see you even come up here and say that, because people would rather not talk about it. So I definitely say that in the classrooms, if you possibly can, get some literature on human trafficking, pass it out, and announce in your classroom that if you know anybody that's being raped or that's being sold or that they know of or suspect, even if you think that you got a friend that's being sold, please know that you can come tell me. If we need to do it in confidence, then I will do it in confidence. But if I can connect you with the resources that will help you, that I will help you. Like I said, playtime is over. Human traffickers are everywhere. It's a 16-year-old girl that got her and her friends went to a party. As soon as they got there, they were given a drink. They were raped and sold, and they videotaped it. And how she found out, they put it on the computer. They put it on Twitter. They put it on Twitter. That's how bad they think they're not going to be stopped. So I'd say educate the classroom and all the students on what that human trafficking is real. And it's not just people coming over and ship from Mexico. It's real. It's happening to our children. It didn't just happen to me. I wasn't in a club. I was at home in bed with my husband going to sleep that any wife should be able to do. I was going to work every day. We were in church every Sunday. And I still was drugged. That little girl was drugged. So please educate them and open the door for them to be able to come say to you that something's happening to me. Let them know that there is resources. There is somebody that they can come tell. Thank you.
I have a couple comments before the question.
Okay.
One is that is the most incredible testimony that I have heard surrounding this project and our thoughts about it at the church, and my admiration for your faith. And I think everybody in this room, as they stood, you know, we hear a lot of speakers at this church and a lot of fine preachers, but because I think you've lived through so much pain, it just sort of pierces through our intellects and into our gut or our heart or whatever. And I thank you for getting out on the road. You did the best job of proselytizing I have ever heard. You could raise megabucks.
Thank you.
The second comment is similar, and I was sitting in here imagining what your life might have been like had you not been through these cycles of pain. And suddenly this image of a top executive, maybe Hewlett-Packard or a major university or the top 100 companies, you're up there near the ceiling, leading women in an industry or what, and you'd be a millionaire. That was the image that popped
Wow.
up, okay? Because you have it, and clearly your time in management where you got several promotions rapidly, and other people recognize that. So I feel very hopeful you will be, I don't have a doubt you will be successful in doing your project there, and maybe we can help in a little way. My third is a question, actually. You spoke, of course, of your relationship with God, and you spoke about those women that would come behind bars and tell you God loves you. And you spoke about signs like a sinkhole, you know, right before, and you'd think up. I guess I'm asking what so far, because we're about healing in this project, healing people very wounded and broken through no fault of their own. Besides the people coming into the prison and sinkholes, what could you tell us, lay people, and this is pretty new to us, has been the most healing, I don't know, program you've been in or outreach you've seen, or how can we help not only the people we come to us, but also our own broken selves in the healing process? Besides, I love you. Okay. I got it. I love you just the way you are.
You.
All right,
Thank
but
you.
over and beyond that.
Thank you so much. I love you too. When I got to San Antonio, it was like a spirit, because my body didn't belong to me. And I think that was the hardest part. Throughout all the stuff that happened to me prior to getting married, I overcame that, and I was good. But human trafficking was a different monster. All the things that I knew went out the window. I couldn't use that to come back and stand back up, because now my body didn't belong to me. Human trafficking is so dehumanizing to a female and men and boys. So don't let me get it wrong. There are boys being drugged and sold too. So it was so dehumanizing that I couldn't do nothing but spend time with God, because my body didn't belong to me. So it was hard for me to even take showers. So I went to, first thing I did was went to treatment, because I had to get all the drugs that was put in my body out. And then I went to Christ Healing Center in church, mainly church. I spent 24/7 before God on my knees. That was the only thing that saved me this time, was my relationship with God. I had to know who he was because now I got a different anger for him because I got married. I still was going to church. I laid down and went to sleep. How did you allow this to happen to me? So now I got to know who you are for real because now I'm angry with you and I got a reason to be, you know? So I can turn my back on you and forget you forever now. So I got to know, where were you and who are you for real? I can't know who you tell me who you are. I got to know who you are for real. So I had to learn who God was. And they have a place, Christ Healing Center, and all they do is pray there. All they do is pray. All they do is pray for you so you can get before God, and then you get to know who God is. So I did a lot of studying. So definitely in a therapist. I see a therapist from day one and still talk to her today. So I think therapy, intense therapy, and then they have this new technique that helps you communicate back with your body and come back into your body and take your body back. And I think that's the main thing. I got to take my body back. Did I answer it?
That's wonderful. I'm sure Suzanne's made you aware that we've had a course on trauma led by a psychologist. And so far we've gone through a lot of fairly new research material on the physiological reactions and how these memories are embedded in the body from all these painful traumas. And we're just getting to the part, and I come from a therapy background, as you might already picked up on, but a good old social worker. But one of the things I've learned is how little talking therapy, top-down therapy you might call, is effective with people suffering from this kind of trauma. So what you just did, you made it specific, taking a shower, taking back your own body, what kind of, whether it's massage or yoga or dance or singing together. There's a lot of room to imagine, but helping women take their own body back. And the course is going to continue for a few more sessions where we hear from different therapists about different ways of taking back your body. Thank you.
There was one of the techniques I think mattered the most for me with my therapist. My husband, when we separated, once I heard the recording of him in the bed with the boy, that just set him off the cliff. So he got extremely mad at me. So he recorded all the stuff that was being done to me, and he started sending me voicemails that I listened to for almost a year, every day, 3 times a day, because I couldn't believe that this was me. I can hear me screaming. I can hear him telling me to do stuff. I can hear women telling him to make me do stuff to them. So I listened to that every day. So the therapist is this click treatment. They put this thing in your hand, and you talk about, I got to talk about the voicemails and the things I heard and the things I could remember that was done to me. And so in talking about that, the vibration in my hand helped me separate the voicemail from what happened to me to my body and who I am. This is my body. It's not this, and give it back to the person that it belonged to. And it's not mine to carry every day and on and on and on and on and on. It's my husband's and the choices that he made and the lifestyle that he chose. So I think that was the main thing, was being able to physically feel something and realize that this is my body and not his, and not the human traffickers. So, and separate the man that I married is not the man that I knew and who he really was. Okay? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Carolyn, thank you.
Thank you.
I've heard you say twice, and this is just a practical question. When you walk in a church, you need to know that you're just like me and I'm just like you.
Yes.
What do I do to make that happen?
You know, I'm in here, and let me use AA as an example. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, I can go to any AA on the face of this earth and walk in those doors, and I'm accepted, and I'm loved, and I'm hugged, and I feel at home. I feel at home in AA because they know that we got a lot in common. So even as Christians, you know, I thought that if you didn't prostitute, that you were better than me. But I know now that everybody in here got something that they went through in life that makes them a saint is but a sinner that got saved. And I didn't understand that meaning. I thought that your trauma, my trauma is different than yours, but our walk is actually the same. So I think in knowing that, I know that, but a new lady coming in here is not going to know that. She's not going to know that. So I think just hugging her, and believe me, from the streets, we can tell a genuine hug from one that, oh, let me just hug you. And shake your hand, but, oh, let me wash my hands afterwards. Because you got all these demons going on in you, you know. But realizing that, you know, I overcame my challenges. I don't care that hers is different than mine, but I can hug her and know that God delivered me, and he's going to deliver her. And this is my sister, not a prostitute, not somebody that came out of prison. This is my sister. So I think finding a way to show that, and everybody here has been amazing at doing that. I love Fayetteville. Since I've been here, I've not picked that up from anybody. Not that I'm trying to, but I haven't. So you guys have been taught well, and you're doing a wonderful job at that. But knowing that you guys are my sister in Christ and my brother in Christ, and we're not strangers. We're child of the Most High living God. So if you serve the same God I serve, then that makes us family. And so almost the same thing as AA. We got to be family. We got to start standing together and saying, I'm going to walk with you through this, Carolyn. And I'm going to walk through Magdalene's house with this. And when you go to that house, I'm going in there to see my sisters, not a ex-prostitute.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. And I echo everything she said. We're so honored to have you here, and I could ask lots of questions. But one thing that came to mind, we had a panel. It was an district attorney, and I don't remember who else was here, but I went up to him after, and he said, everything in that documentary, A Path Appears, about Magdalene House, he said that is right on for here. He said, and what I learned something from you, and I was ignorant because I thought human trafficking, that's something that goes on in Asia or somewhere, whereas the word prostitution is just it's just accepted, the women want to do that, whatever. But he said there's a police chief, not in Fayetteville, but a surrounding town. The police chief told him, we don't even have human trafficking around here. And what I learned from you before was prostitution is exchanging sex for anything, for food, shelter, drugs, money, or any other commodity. And when the other woman asked about what do we do, in the schools, in the classroom, it's not just in the classroom. I mean, we have a police chief who thinks that. And I think you coming here and us talking about it is such a big step in the right direction, but it's about educating everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to hear more about in San Antonio or the other places, like how you did that in the community for people who think it doesn't happen here.
Let me give you an example of me just being here. Suzanne was going to get her hair cut and dropped me off at a corner, and I go to the store, and I go into a tea shop, and I tell the lady, I say, is how oil, vinaigrette, oil shop. So I go in there, and I love to talk to people, and so I'm always focused on bringing awareness to people. And I was asking her how easy it is to do this and start this business. And she said she loves it, and do you love doing what you do? And she said, yeah. And I asked her, I said, well, Magdalene House is starting here in Fayetteville. I said, do you know about human trafficking? And she said, yeah, she knows about the, them bringing them over and keeping people captive and people paying for to get the people back. And I said, no, you're looking at a human traffic survivor. I said, I was married, went to church every Sunday, laid down and went to sleep with my husband and was drugged and sold. I said, so human trafficking could be somebody sitting next to you or talking to you or walking in a room with you, or who, and she was shocked. She was shocked at that. So definitely, I think Magdalene House is just a start. It's just a start. Once it opens up, once more people are being saved from human trafficking, the more it's going to be aware. And the more people, do you not know that it could possibly be somebody in this room that's either in it or being sold and so ashamed to tell somebody. So that will open the door for people to start coming out and saying, this was done to me, and it is happening. So I think the more we talk about it and the more we help people, the more people in Fayetteville, because I lived in Kingwood, Texas, which is really ritzy, and people, is prostitution there, human trafficking there, drug addiction, alcohol. If you got alcoholics, if you got drug addicts here, then you got human trafficking here. Wherever you got drugs, you got human trafficking.
We're going to have to go. Some of us are headed into worship. I want to make one comment in addition to just thanking you for sharing your story. We've been taught by other survivors that when you share your story, it costs. It's not something you do lightly. You put yourself out there, and I hope you're experiencing nothing but love in return, and yet you take a risk. Do you realize, as eloquent and articulate and as Carolyn is, she's never done this before. Yeah. She has come to Fayetteville, made a place for herself. Fayetteville has responded, may I say, with safety. You talk about experiencing safety. Yes. Do you want to say something about safety? But we've got to go, but she hasn't known safety. She hasn't slept with both eyes closed until she came
I'm 56 years old. 56 years old. And I slept, I remember going in and Suzanne showed me my room and everything. And I went in there, and I always pray wherever I go. And I laid down in that bed, and I went to sleep. I didn't wake up in the middle of the night, because normally I make myself wake up so I can look around, make sure everything's still all right. And I check my body in the morning, and I still check my body. I've been checking my body for 2 years now. I did not check for needle marks when I woke up for the first time, and I'm 56 years old. April 4th was my birthday. I turned 56. So, yes, I feel safe here. Thank you.
So thank you to Fayetteville, to St. Paul's, to Fayetteville, but thank you most of all to Carolyn. You've transformed us, and we're hoping that Carolyn might make a home with us and help us raise up our Magdalene House.
Yes.
Are we encouraging her? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Love you too. I want us to take our picture before we get down.
Yep.